Well, I am really excited to talk to my first guest. John O'Connor is a journalist, travel writer, and self-described skeptic who spent a year traveling the country talking to those who believe in Bigfoot. He joins me now to talk about his book, The Secret History of Bigfoot, Field Notes on a North American Monster. Welcome to New Day, John.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Okay, so this is Bigfoot's backyard, so welcome to Bigfoot's backyard.
Thank you. Yeah.
I mean, do you really feel at home when you're here now that you've done all this research?
Yeah, this is where I began my book. For for obvious reasons. I mean, I began in the North Cascades. There's just such a rich history of Bigfoot here in the Pacific Northwest, and going all the way back to some of the earliest indigenous records, the legend and lore kind of come out of here, and it's just an incredible landscape that I'm ashamed to say I'd never been here before until the fall of 2021, and I knew that I had to come here. This is where Bigfoot kind of starts, and there's just so much here to see and do. So
this is where the Bigfoot lives. Can you talk about some of the places that you visited?
Yeah, so I wanted to have kind of geographical dispersal, like north, south, east, and west. So I went to Kentucky, Texas, Pacific Northwest here, and specifically I was in the North Cascades. I went to Mount St. Helens, and then I drove west and drove south down into Oregon, what I always considered growing up to be the Goonies country.
Yes.
And stopped and talked to some Bigfooters along the way, and just did a lot of hiking and camping, and and I was also in the Berkshires back in Massachusetts and a few other places.
Where you had learned more about it. Before we move into more lore, I just have to ask, what in the world made you decide you wanted to write a book on Bigfoot?
It was a lot of things, but to simplify it for you, there's a writer named Peter Matheson who mostly known for a book called The Snow Leopard, which I'm a big fan of his, and he passed away a few years ago, but I found out that he was a Bigfooter. This is a guy who won the 2 National Book Awards, like a very sane, sober guy, and he spent many decades Bigfooting, hunting Bigfoot around the Pacific Northwest, and I thought, that's really interesting, and I didn't know that it was something that writers did or like serious journalists did, so I decided to kind of follow up on what he did.
I think, so that's what they're called, Bigfooters?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And what is a Bigfooter? Like, how would you describe a Bigfooter? Like, what is their, explanation?
Yeah, like a serious diehard Bigfooter is someone who spends their weekends, not every weekend, but many weekends, out in the woods, out in the wild places in America looking for Bigfoot.
Really?
Yeah, and sometimes, setting up trail cameras, setting up audio recording devices to try to catch sound recordings of Bigfoot, and
Okay, this is fascinating because I camp very fervently. I'm a big camper, and sometimes when I'm in my tent at night, I'm like, is that going to be Bigfoot? Yeah. So is Bigfoot then not just one Bigfoot, because that would make it very, very old? It's a species, right?
Yeah, there's people who believe, it depends on who you ask, but people who believe it's just a sort of undiscovered hominid species. But there's also a wing of Bigfooting that believes it's of a more kind of supernatural, paranormal provenance. It's more almost wraith-like or ghost-like.
Like a spirit.
Exactly, yeah. So,
and that embodies the woods.
Yeah.
That's even creepier when I go camping. I'm going to text you and be like, thanks a lot, John.
Yeah. Well, if you spend any time in the woods or in wild places in this country, then you probably know that feeling that drives Bigfooters and drives the interest in it.
That's such a good point. You really do know that feeling. It is just it's almost a primal feeling of like, maybe am I not alone? I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a little bit on the Bigfooter issue. Cryptozoology. That is something that you mentioned in the book, which makes me think of creatures like Loch Ness. Cryptozoology. Can you explain exactly what it is?
Yeah, it means the sort of study of legendary creatures. You're exactly right. Loch Ness Monster, the Chupacabra, Mothman, that sort of thing. Yeah, it's a pseudoscience essentially, but it just means people who go look for mythological legendary creatures.
And in that pseudoscience, there's a lot of research that's done studying the local lore. And speaking of research, there is actually a scientific research organization dedicated to solving this mystery. Is this true?
Well, scientific, it should be in scare quotes,
but scientific.
But yeah, the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, they've been at this for several decades, and they have several different groups around the countries and different affiliations, and they spend a lot of time. They lead expeditions. You can join an expedition if you like to various locales around the country, and they will take you, 2 or 3 nights out in the wilderness to look for Bigfoot.
Wow.
So.
I have to ask, I thought it was really fascinating that you found evidence, or the first evidence was in 1765 of a Bigfoot sighting. Do you have a favorite story in this book?
I think probably my favorite is and the most indelible story is the story of Patty, the Patterson-Gimlin film in Bluff Creek, California, in 1968. A couple of filmmakers, you've probably seen the footage, probably your viewers have, a very grainy, kind of sepia-toned Bigfoot marching across dry riverbed, basically, and it's on YouTube in various iterations. And the story behind that is really interesting and kind of gave us our iconic image of Bigfoot that we have today. You see splashed on beer cans and on bumper stickers, and there's guys called the Bluff Creek Project who I hung out with and who are attempting to recreate, basically refilm that famous film to kind of determine how it was made and whether or not it could possibly be true. It's long been suggested that it was all faked and hoaxed, and they're trying to determine if so, how.
Exactly what went down. All right, I'm here for that.
Yeah.
All right, I can't let you go without asking, are you a believer, John O'Connor?
Well, I have a very cagey and kind of defensive response to that, which is just that I don't like to answer it directly, only because it's sort of contrary to the spirit of the book. That I tried really hard to not inject my own opinions and beliefs into this book. I think readers can sort of discern them eventually, but I really wanted to discover what Bigfooters think, what drives them to do this, and and it's also a spoiler. Like I want readers to sort of discover it for themselves what I think, and I think they will eventually. But I will just say that I think we have to be governed absolutely by reason and rationality, and fact-based reality and science, and Bigfoot doesn't hold up well there, unfortunately. I like the idea of Bigfoot. I totally understand people's desire to believe in it, and I'm a fan, but I did not see or hear anything in my year
Any
of Bigfoot.
concrete evidence. Well, all right, we'll give that to you, that cagey answer, but we don't know everything. So we'll leave with that. Thank you so much,
Thanks for having
John.
me.